Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dear Abby. I am your host. My name is Abby. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to this episode today, and I hope you guys enjoy. Today I wanted to talk about something that is a universal experience, whether you have a mental illness or not, is not letting something go, and also holding on tight to something that's kind of making us miserable. Just the process of recognizing that, letting it go. And then I'm, of course, as I always do, because I like spreading awareness and talking about mental illness, we're going to turn that into specifically not letting go of OCD or not letting go of your worry or the obsessions that you have and the compulsive behaviors, and talking about how sometimes when we're not changing and when we don't feel better, it's because maybe a part of us doesn't believe that we can actually get better. Maybe a part of us believes that we aren't going to be able to let this stuff go. Maybe a part of us believes that OCD is still helping us, that depression is somehow helping us, and the worry is somehow helping us. And so if you think something's helping you, of course, you're not going to let it go. So I think we're talking about it all from all angles. My goal for this episode is to remind myself of things that I can let go of, and to talk through some of the things that I've done in recovery with therapists to let some of that stuff go. And also, this is very much inspired by the book Freedom from Obsessive Compulsive Disorder and a lot of the other OCD books. I think Jonathan Grayson, he talks about, he has like a workbook type of a setup for the book, and it also has kind of pros and cons of OCD. And maybe I'm not saying that totally correct, so don't totally quote me on that. But when I read the book like a couple years ago, I remember that really stuck out to me, because he talks about sometimes people aren't they're not ready to let it go. They're not ready to change. They're not ready to let the obsessive worry go, to let some of the depressive beliefs go, or to forgive themselves and move on, or, whatever it is. But this episode is very, very inspired by that, because I think before I read that book, I didn't think about that in recovery. With my OCD specifically and anxiety, I never thought about how maybe I'm actually somehow think that it's helping me. So I had to work on being very honest with myself and looking at the reality of, like, am I truly happy? Do I truly feel like I'm living the life that I want to live? Does a part of me still think that the OCD rumination patterns is somehow helping me have a better life, be smarter in some way, be, whatever, be more kind, be more considerate? That can be kind of tricky sometimes to navigate, because it sometimes does feel like it's doing something for you. But then you compare all of the time that you've spent on worrying about something that's never occurred, and how much you could flip that into enjoying your life a lot more, and feeling more confident and more trust in life, in God, in the universe, whatever it is you put your trust in. Because OCD is like the number one thing that for me has made me feel like I cannot trust anyone or anything. And that is an incredibly isolating and sad existence. That is the belief that I held, is like, I can't really trust anything or anyone because no one knows everything. So then how can I put my trust in something? But anyways, that's a whole thing. I don't know if we're going to get to everything today, because I could talk on this forever. As you guys know, somehow I've recorded 150 episodes of this podcast, and I still have more to talk about with myself, and I still have more to share and to talk about and nerd out about with this kind of stuff. Anyways, I kind of already dug into it, but I do want to reel it back for a second and be not just diving right in. So I'm going to share some life updates, some not pros and cons, some W's and L's, and then we'll finish what we already started to discuss. And then we'll end with a Dear Abby, and then that'll be it for today. My dub for this week is I've been very good at not taking criticism as like an end-all be-all of somebody hates me or taking it extremely personally. I've always struggled with that. I don't know when I learned that or when that became a thing, but as long as I can remember, I'm very sensitive to criticism, or even if it's constructive criticism and it's like brought to me in like a nicer way, it's still hard for me. I don't know why it triggers me emotionally, but I'm really proud of the progress that I've made the past couple of years with having my husband, for example, when he's like, hey, can you do this instead of this? And even if he asks in like a nicer way, or maybe he sounds like he might sound a little frustrated, because he probably has asked me to do that multiple times. And I sometimes, my brain's all over the place and it's hard for me to really focus in. And that would be hurtful to me if I kept telling my husband to do something and he wasn't listening and like said, yeah, for sure. And then I don't do it, or I get defensive, or he got defensive. So I've learned how to separate someone asking me to do something differently, and that it has nothing to do with how much they love me, my worth, anything like that. It's been extremely freeing to be like that, even though it doesn't feel like second nature yet. It feels like I have to still consciously separate the two. And with that, it kind of goes in with today's episode, because I didn't change that for a long time, because I was like, well, I'm just sensitive. So I'm going to like take things personally. And I thought that was the same thing. And now that I'm older, I realize that's not the same thing. I'm very much capable of feeling like, okay, that doesn't feel very good for whatever reason, but also still being able to separate and then act how I actually would want to act, and listen to my husband that's asking me to do something to help us, or even if it's just to help him. I learned that I can still feel the hurt for some reason. He's not trying to hurt my feelings. I just feel hurt still, but I don't have to make it a huge thing. I just feel hurt. I might listen to a song to calm down, or do something to like calm my emotions and start to regulate. And then I try to do what he is requesting. So that's been a dub. Another dub is just like today it's holiday season. And I feel like that's just a dub, because we're not traveling too much this holiday season. We're only going to visit my family for Christmas this year, and we're not doing anything for Thanksgiving, like traveling wise. And it's actually kind of nice, because instead of being overwhelmed and having to go back and forth and take off work and, do all of this planning, and then when I'm with my family, I'm not as present, because I'm just like, go, go, go. I'm excited to just have things slow for the beginning of the holiday season. Then for Christmas, just really enjoy a long visit with my parents and my siblings. So it's been a very peaceful fall so far. I'm really excited to decorate for Christmas. My mom, she was the ultimate Christmas decorator. She had so many nativity scenes. I think she has like 50 now, but she has, garlands everywhere. She has lights everywhere, inside the house, outside the house. She spends all this time doing all of that work, I think, alone. And that's how she likes it. She likes to just decorate the crap out of our house for Christmas. I'm going to give some spoilers of Christmas wise, if you know what I mean, in regards to getting gifts from Mr. Claus. So just an FYI before I say this, there's like a universal debate, and maybe this is controversial. If so, cool. But of like whether you should lie to your kids about Santa or not, whether you should tell your kids about who Santa is or not, if you should be honest, or if it's okay to just make believe for a little bit when they're young. And for me, I personally think that there is such magic in the creation of Santa, because sure, is it devastating when you find out about that? It was, but you get over it pretty fast, and then you get to watch your younger siblings experience that. And also now I just feel like all of the magic wasn't because of Santa Claus, that he actually was like a magic guy in a sleigh that flies with reindeer, even though that would be kind of cool. It's just that I had a family and a mom who put so much effort into just getting us to be excited and to be together, to laugh, to play, and to look forward to family time and to look forward to opening gifts. And so that magic of Christmas is still there for me because I get to watch my sister now be a mom and, celebrate Christmas with her little kids that are now old enough to understand and be excited for Christmas and getting gifts and giving. So that's always really fun and special to see it through their eyes again. And then B, the spirit of Christmas, the magic of that make-believe world is still in my heart. It's just transformed into gratitude towards my mom and all the work that she put in. But anyways, this episode's not about Christmas, but that's just a dub, is that I'm very, very excited for Christmas. I love Christmas. It's my favorite holiday. And then, not to bring it down, but I should always start with my L for the week instead of my dub. Also, am I weird for doing dubs and L's? Dub and L is that's quite an elementary like school thing to say, I think. Still, like, it's not trendy anymore. Maybe I should switch it up and not do dubs and L's, because I might be past the point of when that is a fun, cool thing to do or words to use. I don't freaking know. I can't keep track. I don't even also know. I'm officially old because I don't understand what's happening in the world of younger kids. I have heard 6, 7, like twice, and I know it's a big thing because they always mention it like it's like brain rot, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I don't know what it's from. I don't know what it is. I know the numbers. I don't know what I don't know what it means or why it's funny. I don't. And I used to think that stuff was funny. And I'm not mad about it. We all did stuff like that when we were younger. So go for it. Sometimes that stuff brings people together. Just brain rot. I'm about it, I guess. I just don't understand that stuff now. My L is that my SIBO is back. I did this whole thing, and SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Anyways, my stomach just hurts again. It hurts every morning. It's bad. I'm just trying to figure out. I've started to lay off of dairy and other things to see what would help. I only eat sourdough I try not to eat seed oils. I'm doing all of the nutrient things. I'm moving my body every day, and it's back, and it's painful. And I already did antibiotics, and I've done rounds like that before, but it literally goes, and I feel great, and then it comes back like a month, 2 months later, and then I don't want to keep doing the same thing. So we won't talk about that long because that's boring to talk about. So now let's move into excuse me. Now let's move into the meat of today's episode. So we're going to backtrack to what I was saying at the beginning of the episode. So we're going to backtrack to what are you holding on to that you can feel like you want to let go of, but there is an attachment to it, or there's fear of who you are going to be without it, or what your life is going to be like without this part of you, or this part of, not even part of you, just a part of your experience so far in life. It's very much a transformative thing to let something go. And something, it could be a million different things. It can be something rather traumatic, because I think a lot of the times that's a big thing to have to let go. And sometimes some of us have multiple things that kind of pile up, or one thing's come back, another thing leaves, and then another thing comes, and it's not like a one and done, now you're free from it forever. But sometimes it is like that. It really just depends. I don't know on what, but everybody's process of healing is different. I think a follow-up question to what is something that you feel like you want to let go of, but you're a little bit nervous to, or you're not sure how to sometimes, is, do you feel like there's a part of you that still believes that is helping you or protecting you or saving you? Because sometimes we feel like this thing that's causing us to suffer or to be worried all the time we feel like that's somehow protecting us from something bad happening. And so we think that we need to keep that in order for our lives to stay the same. Which brings up a good point of we don't want to let stuff go because we are genuinely scared of our life changing. That's like the uncertain part. Like, is it going to be for the better, for the worse? A lot of us probably deeply feel that it's going to be for the better, but it's still unknown, so it can be scary. It also can feel deeply sad to let a part of you go. I've seen people compare it to like a relay race, or, you know, like this version of you took you to this spot and then the next version is going to take you to the other spot. Another reason I think we have a hard time letting go of things is because you are suppressing a lot of things. And so you might not even realize how much something did affect you because it might just be subconsciously like affecting you. And our bodies usually have a way of somehow helping us know if there is something that is kind of controlling some of our feelings or some of our actions subconsciously. And that can very much obviously directly affect your happiness, your joy, and also how you show up in life to other people, to yourself, to your dreams, to the things that you want to accomplish in this life. So it is very important, I think, to figure out what those things are. Figure out, am I suppressing something? Okay, if I keep getting emotionally frustrated or triggered, or if I have a strong reaction to something and it's pretty consistent, then, and it's kind of around the same type of things, let me try to not for sure find out exactly what it is, but let me just feel what's coming up fully. And sometimes that can be the guide to knowing where it's stemming from, because you might have memories or, you know, images or whatever of maybe a certain event or a person or a place or a thing. And that can be just an indicator of, okay, wait, maybe I haven't like actually processed this before in a way that my brain can actually let it go and be like, this is not an immediate danger anymore. This is not something I have to worry about anymore. The process from that point of maybe figuring out what is stuck to you to actually being able to release it and to process can take a long time. It can look different for everybody. It can be very proactive in something, or it can just be sitting in silence with yourself. It can literally look like a million different things, but I think one of the main things is that you are suppressing something, and you're not. And maybe some of us learned that big emotions are bad or emotions are dangerous. So obviously I think triggers can help you be pointed to maybe where you still have some processing that needs to happen. And I've talked about this before a little bit, I think, about what processing means, but from an uneducated point of view, okay, I'm not a therapist or anything. I think for me, it's just your brain is able to recognize that this is not an immediate thing that we need to be fixing or figuring it out. And it kind of knows where to compartmentalize that experience. And it's either going to be, okay, this is still scary and I still need to be watching for this not to happen all the time. Or it's like, hey, I'm older now. I know how to take care of myself. I know how to stand up for myself. If you've had scary physical experiences or some kind of traumatic experiences physically, sometimes like self-defense or just letting your anger out and really understanding that it's not your fault, or going to therapy and really working on separating the bad thing that happened to you and your worth, like that they're not the same thing. Just because something bad happened to you doesn't mean that's who you are. That's where you have to stay. And sometimes what that processing can look like is simply noticing the world. And it doesn't always have to be this intense intellectual battle internally, or this intense figuring everything out, especially if you are someone that struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder or worry, rumination. Sometimes this can be not what we need at all. It's just further making everything super intense, deep, 5,000 layers inward. Sometimes what really helps us process those feelings, those experiences, is new good experiences, or just simply noticing the world around you. Yoga teacher training, we learned this. And I also just saw a video that reminded me of my training. We learn about the art of noticing and not labeling things. That was like always a big thing in yoga teacher training, which I think sometimes it's helpful to label something. So there's pros and cons. But I do think when it comes to admiring the earth, when it comes to other people as well, sometimes it's nice to just peel back all the layers or all the labels or all the things that you want to call that thing, even if it's good or bad, like just looking at it for what it is. What the video was is a guy saying, "What color is the sunset behind me?" And behind him was a beautiful sunset, a bunch of different colors and like textury looking clouds. Once you're about to start being like, oh, it's orange with a little bit of pink, he clarifies, do not use any words to describe it. You can't use any words to describe it. And then your brain just kind of like malfunctions for a second, and now you simply notice. And now it's more of a wonder, and it's not something that's just put in a box. Like that tree is green and it has brown stuff on it, and then you put it in a box and then you tuck it away. I don't know if this is making sense, but it totally makes sense in my brain. And this especially, I think, applies to the people around us. Of course, like your more logical brain is going to jump in and be like, well, in order to make money and work and feed our family, we have to like do some labeling and stuff. And it's like, of course, if that's the environment that you need to be in, if that's like the need in front of you. But sometimes the need in front of you is also to find joy and to find beauty and peace in this life and to feel connected to something bigger than us, because life is precious, it's fragile, it does end. There's a lot more peace that I feel when I'm able to wonder and when I'm able to not have to figure everything out about everything. As I've said on this podcast before, with rumination and worry, sometimes that leads us to trying to do God math. We are missing a lot of information. We are missing the context that will help. And we're also just missing the information to figure it out. So the energy that's spent on figuring out can be used in ways that'll actually bring you so much more trust and peace and joy. Okay, now to transition into like OCD and not wanting to let go of rumination and worry and anxiety, because maybe a part of us feels like it's still helping us figure something out. Maybe we feel like, but maybe one day I'll finally get that big answer, that big, oh, now everything clicks. Or maybe you think maybe one day you'll finally always know how to cook meat perfectly so you never get sick. And one day that'll click for you. Or maybe one day it'll click for you that you'll know that you aren't violent, that you will never hurt somebody. And our brain tells us, maybe if you just keep thinking about this or seeking reassurance or doing these compulsions, then you're going to find that answer and you won't have to worry about it anymore. Just keep going. Trust us. Like, trust me a little bit more, a little bit longer. That's what OCD tries to tell us to get us to keep going. I don't think that part of our brain recognizes trust and love and surrender. It's just all about control and protect. And it's missing also a ton of information. But yeah, maybe a part of us still believes and is not ready to let go of the control over the narrative of that, or is willing to kind of admit that to themselves, that they might never know if they're violent or not. They might never know if they are going to get sick from meat, or if they're going to accidentally make everyone sick at the party that you threw because you didn't cook your meat perfectly. Maybe you'll never know if God really is there. Maybe you'll never really know if your spouse really loves you the right way. Maybe you'll never love your spouse. Maybe you'll never know if you love your spouse the right way. But that surely doesn't take away the value of your life. And that definitely doesn't mean that you can't have a very meaningful, joyful, free, happy life. In fact, maybe something that'll help you get there is by leaning very far into that we don't know all of these things, and you might never know it or perfect it or get that one answer. Something I did and still do every once in a while when my OCD gets bad and I get a little bit resistant to treatment, or when I get it's hard for me to not do compulsions or to ruminate, I have to make that list again of what OCD has taken away from me I also read back at old journals of how happy I was when I was actually doing my homework, when I was taking chances, when I was trusting instead of doubting, when I surrendered versus trying to control. And I read those times and how much happier I was and how much hope I had. And that's very motivating to me to read how it's possible to feel better again. And it's possible to get out of the rut. As well as when I read how much OCD has taken away from me, or how much time OCD has taken away from me with very little to no solutions, that's what makes me so motivated and angry. And really, like, to be honest with myself, like how annoyed and mad I am that I have OCD. Because sometimes that is a helpful thing to feel, is like how frustrating it can be when you have OCD. Because we don't do it to ourselves. Like, we didn't give OCD to ourselves. It just happens to us, and it's a biological thing. And at the same time, we can still live amazing, beautiful lives that have deep, deep meaning. And to the bottom of our hearts and the deepest parts of our soul, we can still feel joy, trust, and peace and love. And OCD cannot keep that away from us if we are actively choosing to recover and take that leap of faith into a world that would feel unknown, which is letting go of your worry. If you have that thought come up, that's like if you watch a movie, or if you listen to a show or a podcast, or if you hear something in the office that someone says, or whatever it is that triggers you, and now you're alert, and now your alarms are going off, and there's a thought, there's a feeling of what if, what would you do in this situation? How do you know this is the best thing? How do you know that this is real? How do you know that nobody, like, that they're not just lying to you? Whatever it is, that's the moment of where you have to trust whatever's in front of you. Like, that's when you just take that step of trust, and you're like, I am not going to figure that out. I refuse to figure that out. The last thing I'll say, and the question I'll ask, I guess, is what God math are you trying to do in your brain? What God math are you trying to do that you're missing information for? You can't do God math. My therapist once told me, when I start to notice that I'm trying to do God math, whatever it is, you don't have all the information. So you don't have to burden yourself with the torture and the torment of trying to figure out this impossible question. You don't know, and you don't have to have the weight of the entire universe on your shoulders. Now, that's not the same thing, and that's not the same thing as if there is a very actual real issue. Like, if you lost your job, you need to find a job. That is a real issue, and that's not like an OCD worry. That's like, oh, I need to, like, figure out what I want to do. I need to figure out how I'm going to get a new job. I need to start applying. I need to, like, do actionable things. The rumination part is when it comes in of this excessive worry, this, well, what if I don't get a job? And it will be something that it does not have, like, a straight up answer. And I think a good reminder is you may not need that answer to enjoy your life or to feel peace and home and safe and good. A good exercise to do if you are trying to do God math is something my therapist taught me a long time ago, is to physically, if you need to, act like you are writing, trying to do the God math in a notebook or a calculator, and then physically hand it to God or the universe, whatever you put your faith in. Like, just hand it to God and be like, this is out of my hands. This is not something that I can fix. And that image just helps me, just like physically being like, oh, I'm actually going to hand this off. This is out of my jurisdiction. This is out of my mental jurisdiction. Okay, well, I hope any of that made sense. Now we're going to do a Dear Abby, and then we will end today's episode. Okay, here's today's Dear Abby. It talks a little bit about eating disorders in this, so just an FYI, like a trigger warning. Dear Abby, I hope you're doing great. Thank you. That's really nice. I wanted to talk about the struggle of not knowing what is wrong with yourself when waiting for your medical attention. I'm 16 and in the process of getting diagnosed with an eating disorder. The last few weeks have been full of medical appointments, but the process of actually getting a true diagnosis that I resonate with is so long, especially in the eating disorder area. It has been hard on some points that I wanted to share with you. I find myself really struggling within my relationship with others. What do I tell people, family, friends, when they ask what is going on? I don't want to self-diagnose, but also I can't say that I'm totally okay. Same with school teachers. I do not have an official paper saying that I'm sick, but it is becoming obvious that something is not right. I was also wondering how you dealt with your diagnosis and the impact it has, if it had one, within your family. I have 2 younger siblings, and explaining to them what anorexia is, what it means, what it changes has really been hard. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to or what not to say. I have also been facing intrusive thoughts on nonstop about being sick. I don't feel sick, but everyone seems to think I am. This has been creating expectations around me, which I don't think is good when dealing with a restrictive eating disorder. Finally, my therapists have also been talking about other mental health diagnoses like anxiety disorder and OCD, which is making everything really confusing, and I feel like there's a part of me that I don't control. Sorry, everything is still a mess in my head. I hope it was clear enough for you to understand. First off, that is a lot to handle for a 16-year-old. That's not fair. Like, you're 16. That's just a lot to be going through. So first off, you're already very strong, but it's not fair because sometimes we don't want to have to be strong. So sometimes if you feel weak with everything going on, that just means you're human like the rest of us. I will say, to validate the experience of getting a correct diagnosis, I've never experienced working on that with like an eating disorder. So that might be a little bit of a different world, but I know the process of getting a diagnosis that feels right for you and that you connect with can be an extremely long, hard process, and it is exhausting, and it does feel like an emotional roller coaster. So you don't need to apologize for maybe being all over the place. You actually kept everything very organized in that message, but also don't worry about if you feel all over the place, because that's a lot. So the question you asked, or I think you asked a couple, but I'll just go over each of the things that you mentioned. So you talk about, what do I tell people when they ask what is going on? This might be hard to do, but when you find the right people, it'll feel very freeing to do, but just be honest. You don't have to self-diagnose. You can just say, I'm struggling with A, B, and C. It's okay to be honest with the friends and family, the people that you trust. Confide in somebody. That's an extremely important part of any type of recovery journey, is just be honest about your experience. You don't have to be embarrassed about how hard things are, or how much you're struggling with things that maybe other people might think are easy, or they might not understand how it's so hard. You don't want to be judged for something that you're struggling with and that you really need help for, because other people might not struggle with that exact thing. So you don't want them to judge you like, well, why do you struggle with that? And so I understand the fear of that, but it'll feel good for you to be totally just honest. You don't have to say it perfectly. And for some people, if you feel like if you don't say it perfectly, then they're going to take it the wrong way, then you know that that's not really a safe person to tell stuff to, because they're just going to not really listen to you and your heart and what like might be beneath the words. They might just not be good at that stuff. Sometimes it feels good to be open up about everything, about the little details. And sometimes all it takes is just saying, I'm really not doing okay and I'm struggling with this. And then that's all you might have to say. Another thing on that is you don't always have to tell people about things you're going through unless you feel like that's what you want to do and that will be helpful for you. It might be helpful for them. But if there's somebody that you don't know if you'd want to tell that to fully, then you don't have to tell them anything, and you don't have to explain yourself or over explain. Another part of this is you were asking how I dealt with my diagnosis and the impact it had within my family. I didn't really tell anybody about being diagnosed with OCD like all at once. I have never had conversations with some of my family about like what I struggle with. I think it's just if it came up in conversation and it felt like a good time to be honest, and it was with somebody that I think can handle it, or that can at least listen and try to understand, or at least maybe that they could possibly be struggling with the same thing. I don't know. I would mention it and kind of just go as deep as feels right in the conversation. I didn't ever want to explode on anyone almost. But yeah, some people I told like directly because there were people that maybe would see that there's something happening to me. And then there's some people I just never told. And if they had questions, maybe they'd ask, or if they were worried, maybe they'd ask, but also maybe they could see something was hard for me from afar, but we just never had a conversation about it. So I think I just did what felt okay in the moment. Also, maybe sometime you tell somebody, a friend or a family member, and they don't seem like they are like that invested, or they just seem like, oh, okay, not invested or something. But maybe sometime later they know somebody who's maybe showing the same things, and what you said might come back to their memory and might help somebody else or help them later on. So I think honesty is something that can be hard to do in this day and age, probably in every day and age. But I think with the internet, there's a lot of opinions on things. So it can be hard to tell the truth because you don't want somebody to take it the wrong way or use it against you for some reason. But I do think like just being honest is just the best policy. Better for you, better for everybody else, even if it might be a little bit uncomfortable. And then the last thing you talk about is feeling like you don't feel sick, but everyone seems to think you are, or you're just having intrusive thoughts about being sick. I'm not sure, obviously, what like the specific thoughts are, or if it's just a general like something feels off, something feels wrong with me. I agree that it's not very nice to hear when other people think and say that you're sick, especially the tone or how they deliver that to you, because there's constructive ways and then there's like destructive ways to maybe bring something up. So that wouldn't feel good. It's okay to be confused. This life can be so confusing, and especially being diagnosed with a disorder, with an illness, with anything can be a very odd experience because you know yourself. Like you've been with yourself for, I think you said you're 16. You know yourself to some capacity, and you will continue to learn more and more about yourself as you get older and older. So that doesn't stop. And sometimes you'll be confused again, and then you'll understand things, and then you'll be confused again. But the core of who you are, who you are, is not sick. Like there might be parts of your body, there might be parts of your brain, when you have a disorder, like OCD. When you get diagnosed, it can feel very odd. It feels like you're in a different body almost. And even though you recognize the patterns and you're like, oh yeah, I have done that, it's like, but that doesn't feel like that's who the core of me is, because I don't think it is. Like the core of you isn't sick. There just might be a part of you or a part of your brain, like I said, that might be struggling and might need some extra help. And that's totally, totally okay. And it's not something that you've done terribly wrong. It's just sometimes we need help with things and we need extra support. And we might not feel like we're getting that for a while. But I do believe we will get that eventually. And it might take a long time to feel like the waters are settling and you can kind of feel like you have some bearings as to what's going on inside of you. But you already have a sense of who you are, and there's no need to second guess that. If you feel like there's something that people are telling you that you are that doesn't feel like the symptoms and how you're feeling are matching up, be honest about that as well. Just be very honest about that's not what I'm experiencing. Well, I think that's it for that, dear Abby. To recap, be honest, because it is good for your soul. It is good for other people's soul, because other people might be struggling too, but they might not see anybody talking about it, so then they suppress. So be honest about what you're dealing with. You don't have to use the perfect words or if you're not diagnosed with anything yet, it doesn't mean that you're faking it. If you feel like you're struggling, then you don't need to second guess the fact that you are struggling and that you deserve help. And then also being confused and feeling not in control of parts of your experience is extremely frustrating, and it can be so scary. But don't second guess And if you do, just remember who you are and the core of yourself, and you can trust yourself, and you are stronger than whatever you are fighting. Okay. And thank you so much for writing in. Thank you guys for trusting me, for sending me messages and voicemails. So I have questions. So I have these submissions. That really does mean the world to me that I've had people write in for a while now, and I'm in disbelief that I still get more. I'm very, very grateful and hope I give good advice or decent advice. Anyways, let's wrap this thing up. Okay, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dear Abby. If you want to support the podcast, you can leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify, as well as I post all of my videos or podcasts on YouTube as well. So you can watch the YouTube or, oh my gosh, the podcast on there. You can like, subscribe, comment. That would be awesome. Sometimes I post other things when I have time to edit and film and post other things. If you want to go the extra mile and support the podcast, you can share this podcast on like your Instagram story or to somebody that you think might enjoy this podcast, to other podcasts that talk about the same things or similar things, just whatever, to your story. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Be kind to yourself. Take yourself out. Do something fun. And love you. Bye.
우회전 taking a ride to Jonah Lake 눈치 보면서 들어가 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들